yesterday and today, we were talking about the Kleefstra syndrome guideline project. So welcoming in Charlotte Gaasterland, and she's going to deliver a presentation around the guideline project. It's been an enormous effort across the world. I mean, literally all these different working groups, so many people working on it, and really excited to bring some of the updates around that. So, Charlotte, thank you for being here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Then I will start sharing my screen. So please let me know if you see it properly now. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So thanks for inviting me to be able to speak today on the guideline project on the Kleefstra syndrome that we have been doing for the last months, years, actually. So just to give you a little bit of context, who am I? I have several affiliations, so I thought it would be nice to introduce who I work for as well, just to give you a bit of context and also know what my specialty is. So I work as a guideline methodologist for the Dutch Federation of Medical Specialists. We have a knowledge institute that really focuses on guidelines for all of the medical specialists that exist. For this institute, I do mainly oncology guidelines, but also part of my job is to work for the European Reference Network Ithaca. As this network is mainly virtual, it's hosted by the Amsterdam UMC, so 2-3 days a week I can be found there working for the ERN Ithaca. The European Reference Network has several main goals. It's a virtual network that tries to exchange data, patient expertise, clinical expertise for rare diseases. And one of its main objects also is guideline development. And there are, I think, 23 European reference networks, and the European Reference Network of Ithaca focuses mainly on intellectual disability, neurodevelopmental disorders, autism, congenital anomalies. So this is the context that the Kleefstra Guideline Project is part of. And in this picture, you see the Guideline Working Group. We are a group of methodologists, also clinicians, and also some project management support from Hungary, France, and the Netherlands. So in terms of the process of a guideline methodology, I think there are several steps that really need to be taken. So in a quick overview, I will show you what these steps can be and need to be. And some of these steps really take up a lot of work, and sometimes more work than you would imagine beforehand. So the first step is really to form a working group and really define who does what. Then a framework is the next step, so you know exactly which topics you will elaborate on in the guideline. You have to really prioritize which issues you want to elaborate on. Then for these issues, you do a literature search, a systematic search, and a systematic selection. Then you do a summary of the literature and also analysis of the quality of the literature. Based on this literature, but also on the clinical expertise and patient expertise of the Guideline Working Group, you form recommendations, which is then established officially in a consensus meeting. And then as a last step, you make this public to the world in, for instance, a peer-reviewed publication, but also other types of documents may be made. So for the European Reference Network of Ithaca, we do several syndrome-specific guidelines, of which Kleefstra is one. We have currently published 2 guidelines, which are the Phelan-McDermid guideline and Rubinstein-Taby guideline, and there are several more projects that we are working on. Also because we stand for so many different rare diseases, we try to aim as many patients as possible with our guideline projects. So we do some transdiagnostic guideline projects as well. So we don't really focus on specific syndromes, but more on overarching topics, such as transition of care, multiple handicaps, sleeping problems, and challenging behavior. So these are some topics that we are also currently working on. Some of these projects go faster than others, but we try to be as inclusive as possible in terms of who we can serve with our projects. So, then on to specifically the Kleefstra syndrome guideline. So as you are well aware, Kleefstra is quite a rare disease. It has not so many patients all over the world. And this gives us some challenges, challenges you may all be very familiar with, but also for us as methodologists, as researchers, it provides some challenges. Because the syndrome is so rare, we have tried to do a systematic search on literature. And when we did this systematic search, we searched in several databases with several search terms, and we only got 365 results in the end. And after some selection, we only had 70 articles that we could include. And as I also work for oncology guidelines, these are numbers that are very, very low. I'm used to working with way larger numbers than this. So this poses a problem because now we know that the literature that is available is just quite scarce. And it's difficult to make recommendations based on literature alone, obviously. Also, apart from the fact that the number of studies is limited, we also know that there's a lot of heterogeneity among patients. So that makes it also quite difficult to make recommendations that may suit everyone. We know from practice that there is questions on surveillance and follow-up. And we also know that somatic features as well as psychiatric features pose issues. There are lots of questions on these, so we would like to make recommendations on them, and hopefully they also have a high burden, and hopefully guideline development may help a little bit in providing recommendations on how to deal with these issues. So how do we do this? We want to develop a clinical evidence-based guideline with the aim in the end to achieve a uniform minimum standard of care, and also to support clinical decision-making. But what does that mean exactly, a clinical evidence-based guideline? When we peel it off, it basically means that we focus on clinical questions, so really issues that we see in day-to-day practice. Evidence-based means that all of these questions are answered first with a systematic search in the literature, and then we combine this with the expertise that is in the working group. The evidence-based means that we do some systematic search in the literature, and then the word guideline provides that we make recommendations based on both what we find in the literature as well as the expertise in the working group, which is both clinical and also patients or elders. So the first step we took was to make a consortium where we have patient representatives and also clinical experts all combined. We have a group of 60 members and 16 countries are in this group. It's quite multidisciplinary, and that is also the aim, because we want to combine as many disciplines as needed to be able to make good recommendations. So we have medical doctors, we have pediatricians, obviously lots of patient representatives, quite an important step, of course, in this process. Clinical geneticists, speech therapists, every discipline that needs to be in this group, we have tried to add as much as possible. But then when you have a group this large, you can imagine that there's many clinical issues that pose a problem and that need to be discussed in the guideline. So identifying the scope of the guideline was quite an endeavor. We have now identified 5 working groups who aim to work on these topics, which are general care, development, speech and communication, behavior, sleep neurology, cardiology, digestive tract, and genetic testing and counseling. But when we asked everyone in the consortium to provide us with the clinical issues that they wanted to elaborate on in the guideline, we formulated 45 clinical questions. And if we have to do a systematic analysis of literature and recommendations for 45 questions, that's quite a large task. So we wanted to scope it down to make it a bit more feasible. We did, in order to do that, we did a prioritization round. So we asked all of the consortium members, which of these topics do you think have most priority and need to be addressed right now in this guideline process? We did this by using a tool that one of my colleagues has recently developed, Michiel Oerbeke. He's a PhD candidate also at the Knowledge Institute and also at the Cochrane Institute in the Netherlands. He developed a tool where the votes were weighed according to a certain stratagem, where if someone has a lot of influence on which items are prioritized, their influence becomes a bit less for the next item that is prioritized. So it really makes sure that every voice is heard properly and that it's weighed according to how many topics someone has a lot of influence on. And the criteria with which we prioritized these items was the burden for the patients and families, prevalence also, and also unwanted clinical variance. So if we thought that a recommendation for a certain topic would really diminish clinical variance and would give a certain standard of care all over the world, that would be a topic that would have most priority. So now we are currently working on 12 questions, which will become 12 chapters in the guideline. We have done a systematic search for all of the literature beforehand, and we do a systematic analysis of this literature per question. Then per question, we look for the proper expertise and expert opinion, and we will formulate recommendations based on every available data that is out there, also patient preferences. So we will ask them their experiences, their values, and together in this group, we will formulate recommendations. These recommendations will finally be established in a consensus meeting. We are planning one in February 2024. So everyone will then come together and all of the recommendations will be established and will be hopefully will be finished by the end of that consensus meeting, and hopefully everyone will have consensus on what we have recommended per clinical question. And we aim to do this as much as possible in a face-to-face meeting, because then we can really provide that good discussion that we want. So these recommendations will then be based on evidence as much as possible, because of the low number of articles that we have found. It will probably mostly be based on the clinical expertise and the patient preferences. But the main goal of the recommendations is that they can also be used as standalone, so that they are quite easily used in practice. They are to be unequivocal. And finally, they should also be valid in all countries, which is quite difficult because we know that healthcare systems all over the world vary quite heavily, even within Europe already. So we are going to aim for describing some sort of minimal care and maybe also some optimal care, so that they can be used in all of the countries and not just very high income countries, for instance. But just to give you a few examples so you know what it will or can look like. One of the clinical questions that we have is what should be monitored in structural heart defects and rhythm disturbance in Kleefstra syndrome, and what is the recommended frequency? Then we provide a little background on this question. So we show some of our data on the prevalence, what defects and disturbances exist, what the age of diagnosis is, clinical implications. Then we provide a systematic search. In the literature, 42 studies gave some data on this. Prevalence numbers we base on the cohorts of the Radboud UMC and also the JUNAIDA database. So we will provide some idea of the prevalence as well. Another question is, what should be, sorry, this is still the same question. We provide some background, and then the recommendation would be routine and regular ECG and rhythm monitoring strategies. We haven't finalized the recommendation yet, but I would imagine that it would look something like this, but the exact routine and the exact monitoring still needs to be found out in detail. So finally, we will hopefully end up with a final project that everyone can use all over the world. We start with the 12 chapters of the 12 questions that we have prioritized. Every question will provide a recommendation. We will also write a clinical synopsis that can easily be used for clinicians all over the world. And we also aim to have a lay version in different languages so that it's even more easily used everywhere. We may also provide, together with this, a research agenda because as we have done a systematic search, we know exactly where the gaps in the literature still are. So we can provide an advice on where the next research should go to. And also we want to think about a guideline update plan because hopefully there will be lots more scientific research going on in the next years. So the guideline needs to be updated because it will be too old probably within a couple of years. So these are the acknowledgements. Obviously, Jitske Kleefstra plays a major role in this project as the chair. Ariane Bouwman is working very hard to be able to do all of this. Clea is the project management support from the ER and Ithaca, and I have also added other names that have played a major role in this guideline project. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I think it's, you referenced Phelan-McDermid syndrome having a guideline project. And I think that's where one of the, we started really seeing the need here is not only from our own patient community, but we've seen these other organizations producing these materials. And then just the consistent feedback that we get about, I've taken my child to my doctor and this is, the Google handout, right? And that's the common feedback. So now, the guideline is going to be developed. So how soon after the consensus meeting in February do you think that this is going to roll out where it's going to be tangible and available for professionals?
That's a good question. I would hope quite soon. It depends a bit on how fast we are with writing everything down and being able to publish it. Finally, we will publish everything on the Ithaca website. I hope it will not take a lot of extra time after the consensus meeting. I would guess a couple of months, maybe.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming today and presenting. I know that this is a Herculean effort. I mean, literally, you kind of highlighted a few of the people and the number of people involved here, and it's just it is consistent meetings, lots of tough questions, distilling down what are I mean, there's so many things. There's 40 plus things, right, that we originally want to answer. And it's like, okay, well, that is, almost unattainable to attack all that at once, right? So let's distill this down. Let's focus on the most important things now. And to your point, this is going to need to be continuously updated. And so it's a, I look at it as a formalization and a foundation for us to build upon. But without this effort, I feel like everybody's kind of flying in the wind. So this is a great effort and initiative. So thank you very much for being a part of it.
Thank you so much.